Ah, it's been so long since I saw Fresh Blood or Prisoners of War. And lucky you, I will be your warden. Before I subject you to cruel and unusual punishment, won't you listen to an old Valkyria's tale? It was precisely 1 year ago when I heard the tale of the first Valkyria Chronicle, and I wasn't too pleased to hear of the Federation's successes. While I may not know anything of Valkyria 2 and 3, I assure you Valkyria 4 will be different. The Imperials will march to victory. We will burn anyone's feeble cause to stop us. The Imperials... Wait. I'm the prisoner of war?
It all began with two great powers vying over control over Europa. In the east was the Imperial Alliance, known as the Empire. In the west, a network of loosely allied democracies banded together to form the Atlantic Federation. Both powers depend on a precious mineral, Ragnite, for their prosperity. Naturally, Ragnite's scarcity led to war. The Empire captured one nation after another, pushing back the Federation. And now the Alliance's hope hinges on the success of a secret counterattack known as Operation Northern Cross. This is a retelling of General Claude Wallace's story. It begins with Squad E in a field of flowers when the Imperials attack. From there begins their operation to take back what the Empire has stolen. What's interesting is VC4 takes place at the same time as VC1 and 2. Early, it's mentioned that Prince Maximilian has invaded Gallia, a neutral territory nestled between the Federation and the Empire. This is the plot of the first game, so you can get a better idea of the time frame of things. Something I have mixed feelings on is, it felt a little less personal and less focused on the Valkyria than the first game. VC1 went hard with World War II callbacks and themes of racism and really focused on the lore of the Valkyria. I missed that a little bit. VC4 is more about the large army of the Federation rather than the small Gallian militia. Now we all know a story is only as good as the characters that drive it. VC4's cast is colorful, starting with Claude Wallace, who is more level-headed and is trying to prove himself to his comrades that he's no longer the scaredy Claude he used to be as a kid. Raz, my husbando and absolute favorite loudmouth, who is brash and headstrong. Kai, a sniper with a low-key demeanor, rational and level-headed. Riley Miller, a brilliant engineer who's especially critical of Claude. And Miles, the tank driver, and he's kinda there with his love of tanks and new gear. Overall, they were pretty good. It did take me some time warming up, but as you unravel the characters' past, seeing where the cast started and how they became a tight-knit bunch was well told. I grew to love all of them, although none of them came close to Raz and Kai.
Now, it may seem like we're on the back foot of things, me being a prisoner of war and all, but I assure you, no single conflict in Valkyria kind has ever gone 100% one way or the other. In due time, our flawless stratagem will bear fruit, and we will snatch victory from the jaws. What do you mean we're losing?
After the disappointing action spin-off Valkyria Revolution, released in June of 2017, Valkyria Chronicles 4 went back to its roots of the original, with added bells and whistles. If you've played the first game, you'll instantly feel right at home. Before combat, you select what units you wish to deploy. Scouts, which are less broken than they were in the first game, and run quite the distance and spot enemies from afar while dealing decent damage. Shock troopers, which are a million times better than what they were in the first game. Originally their movement was shit, but now they can get some good mileage. But what they're known for is their devastating damage. Lancers, forever slow, but can take down tanks. Engineers are your healers, can repair tanks, sandbags, disarm mines, and heal infantry. Snipers, self-explanatory, crappy movement, but can hit from afar. And the newest addition, and a scout's worst enemy, are the Grenadiers. They fire grenades from afar, which can stop tanks in their tracks or blow up an infantry unit, doing massive damage and slowing them down. So many times have these little shitheads ruined my plans. They are the worst. And of course, you have tanks. Slow, but have high defense all around except for the radiator, usually on the back. And an APC, Armored Personnel Carrier, is the scout of tanks. It has insane movement, but its defenses are pretty weak. What's great about it is it can transport people, which is a game changer. After the units have been deployed, you'll have X amount of golden badges, known as command points, or CP. That's how many actions you can take. The more leaders deployed, the more CP you have. But if they die, you'll lose a CP the next turn. Same goes for the enemy. When deciding who to move is considered command mode. Action mode is selecting the unit, moving them, and being mindful of their AP gauge, as that determines their movement, and having them do an action, whether it be attack, heal, repair, etc. Focusing on attacking, when you line up the crosshairs against an enemy, you'll see how many bullets it would take to kill, assuming each bullet hits. Headshots are where the money's at, baby, dealing critical damage. What makes this game the most challenging is you could be attacked while in action mode, dodging gunfire and grenades. It makes it so you can't just charge enemies. Now you can move characters twice, but they'll have less AP each time they move. A new and highly appreciated feature is commanding. It costs 1 CP and SP, which can be used once a round by a leader. You can command 2 other units to follow the leader without expending their AP. Another game changer. The goal of each mission varies. At the start, it's usually to capture the enemy base, but later it's kill this enemy or last for this many turns, and sometimes objectives change mid-battle. I do wish before you deploy, you can see what enemies you'll be faced with, assuming they're in range of where you'll be deployed. At best, you get sightlines after you deploy, different colors to symbolize if the enemy sees you or not. In addition to commanding infantry and tanks, as you progress you'll be able to use orders. Orders cost CP, but can grant you buffs in battle, high defense, stronger attack, better evasion, etc. But so can the enemy. And ship orders. You can order a ship now to show enemy locations, redeploy tanks, or fire a mortar. After the round, it will be the enemy's turn. Note, any CP you decide not to use will roll over to your next turn. It's always important to know, most anything you can do, so can the enemy. Using sandbags to cover to reduce damage, crawl in grass, they can issue orders, and steal bases. Bases are important for calling reinforcements. If you capture an enemy camp, you cancel their reinforcements, and vice versa. If an enemy downs an infantry unit, you'll have 3 turns to rescue them before they're permanently gone. Or if an enemy unit touches a downed soldier, they'll die then and there. Now, if you're anything like me, you'll save scum to high heaven. I don't know what it is, but I can't stand letting a character die. But something new are last stands, where a character can take one final action before keeling over. They can counter the enemy attack or inspire, which boosts the stat based on their class. And lastly, I just want to touch up on the maps. I like the first game's maps more. I felt they were more varied, while VC4's whole thing was moving in snow. For example, there'd be piles of snow blocking paths that had to be run over or blown up, visibility issues during snowstorms, or without winter gear, units would die in 2 turns instead of 3. That's not to say it only relies on that. There are a lot of twists and turns that can happen mid-round. Enemy reinforcements, an unbeatable tank, the terrain changes. It keeps you on your toes. But no matter what obstacle gets in your way, if you keep yourself focused on the objective, you'll get the best score if you finish quickly, while taking as many of the enemies out. You'll be awarded experience and money, which can be spent on new gear and leveling up your classes. While at HQ, you can go to the training grounds to level up an entire class opposed to individual characters. Leveling them up will unlock new orders and new potentials. Potentials are unique skills that activate under specific circumstances. Some are good for buffering the unit, others, not so much. The mess hall is another area to spend SP and learn special orders. And the R&D facility is where you upgrade your gear and tanks with money. Lastly, what you can do at headquarters is reorganize your squad. Exchange who is in your reserves into your active party. Review their potentials, gear, and who they get along with. This is important because nearby squad mates will attack with the main unit. Plus, if people who get along together are deployed together, often you'll unlock a squad story. These side stories are about your squad mates. You get a more intimate look at their upbringing and personality. Plus, you can unlock their best potential or change a bad potential into a positive one. Sometimes it takes a while to unlock, so it's best to spam skirmishes. Skirmishes are non-story related battles meant for grinding. Book mode is discovering the untold story of the Second European War. Here's where you watch the story unfold in chapters. You can revisit old episodes, skirmishes, and squad stories. There are interludes and sub-episodes that are skippable, but I would recommend doing everything to get the full scope of our characters.
And that sums up the tactics of those wretched Gallian rats. However, as the cold embrace of winter settles, it is time to experience the fires of war. For you see, while they may have the tactics, the strategies, the weapons, there is one thing they lacked. Our finely crafted, expertly made strategy. They're using our strategies against us?
Valkyria Chronicles 4 continues with a watercolored style, switching between panels and full-on cutscenes to convey story. I like that the cutscenes are split into sections, giving the player a moment of pause, or the choice to continue reading through Claude's story. I wish there was a way to have an auto-scroll text so I didn't have to keep clicking X after every sentence. The Great Ace Attorney spoiled me. On the field, they kept the watercolored look. I like that branching out from the center, it's deeply colored, but as you get closer to the edges, it whites out. It's an interesting design choice. I also like how everything is like a book, a sheet of paper, character information, commands, seeing the map looking like it's laid out on a planning table. I appreciate that it keeps to the aesthetic of the World War. I think what also gives it some flair is the choice of text when units fire or tanks move. It's such a contrast to the washed out colors, which makes it pop all the more. The look of command mode is excellent. It gives you all the information you need about the unit's class, if they're out of ammo or low on AP, what direction they're facing, if they're crouching. You can see where tanks can't fit or obstacles that can be broken, ladders, grass to hide in. You really can make an informed decision while moving your pieces. Now, the sounds of war are pretty similar to the first games. Trumpets, drums, the overarching epicness. In book mode, it has relaxing themes, but when you're at war, the melody completely changes. Same for in battle. One thing that really adds an extra sense of dread is when it's the enemy's turn, the music changes into something sinister. I don't have much to say other than the soundtrack accomplished what it needed to, capturing themes of war. And speaking of themes, Squad E Fights On is probably my favorite track. Oftentimes, Squad E is put in impossible situations, but they fight on. No matter how grim it is, how many people they lost, they fight on.
In the end, despite all the advantages we had, I regret to say we found ourselves on the retreat. It is difficult for an officer of my caliber to admit when we have been outmatched. However, wisdom is born from experience, and from the many defeats and brutal losses we suffered, I am, much to my shame, forced to admit the Gallians are indeed worthy opponents. The new classes, weapons, and tactics make them an unstoppable threat. And to fight against them would be inviting death. We're winning. Aha! I knew those Gallian rats couldn't stand the might of our glorious empire. We shall rake their broken bodies across the—
Thank you so much for watching. Top box is my review of the first Valkyria Chronicles game, and the bottom box is an easy strategy game I enjoyed called Lost Dimension. Hope you enjoy both videos, and remember, be on the right side of history by supporting the Empire. Join the Patreon for $1, and that gets you into our Discord. $5 gets you early access, and $10 means you get postcards. As always, thank you so much for watching. Glory to the Empire, and I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!